Welcome to Vermontitude, a collaborative effort between Great Eastern Radio, the Brattleboro Reformer, and BCTV to bring you the stories behind the stories on the topics you want to learn more about. Because there's always more, so there'll always be Vermontitude. Hosted by me, Peter Fish Case. Welcome to Vermontitude. New episodes drop every Tuesday and can be found by going to vermontitude.com, reformer.com, brattleboro.tv, and locally on Comcast 1078. We come to you from our studios at the Innovation Box on Flat Street. I'm Peter Fish Case, and each week I cover the topics that are of concern to Windham County and the towns that reside within its borders. Joining Vermontitude today from Windham Windsor Housing Trust, Executive Director Elizabeth Bridgewater, and Director of Asset and Property Management, Ed Bordas. I get that right?
That's right.
All right. Let's get into it. I mean, there's a lot. I think if I were to kind of sum this thing up and some of the problems and some of the things that always seem to make the headlines and capture the narrative, but you guys, you have 918, how do you classify these? Residences?
Homes.
Homes.
Yep.
Okay.
We call them homes.
Nothing. I dug a little too deep for a big fancy word. Now, when we talk about like affordable housing, do we talk about having less control because of the way you're funded? How does that work?
We're treated actually the same way as any private property owner would be treated in terms of fair housing laws and process. And we go through a very similar process around resident selection that some other folks might go through. Vetting people's ability to pay the rent, looking at their background and making sure that they'll likely be a good tenant. I think the biggest difference is that we have income limits on our properties. That's the nature of affordable housing. We're targeting to serve a particular segment of the population, different folks in the community. And so we cap our rents and we also have income limits. So that's really the big difference.
All right. So in other words, so you're providing decent housing for people who couldn't otherwise afford decent housing. And I've been in some of your properties, and they seem to be well cared for, well taken. Especially the new build stuff is really kind of nice.
Yeah, I love to tell this story. When I first joined the Housing Trust almost 10 years ago, and the then Director of Property Management drove me around the community, and we were on our way to look at a particular property. And as we were on our way, I kept saying, "Oh, that's a beautiful building. Oh, that's one of the Housing Trust buildings. Oh, look at that historic building that's been lovely preserved. Oh, yeah, that's one of the Housing Trusts." You can sort of tell by the color scheme that we use. We have a particular brand with some of the historic properties that we own.
Yeah.
And I think we're pretty proud of the homes that we provide in the community.
Okay. And I feel as again like you should be, but let's talk about some of these dwellings and maybe touch a little bit upon some of the problems. I mean, I don't think that they are unique to Windham Windsor Housing Trust. I think they are unique to anybody who rents 2 units or 918 units. But I know we're kind of in here to talk about how, like, what you do is good and solid work, and it is. I've had many conversations that bolster you guys up. But talk to us about some of the challenges, some of the things that aggravate you.
Sure. I think the most important thing to highlight is that the vast majority of our residents are hardworking, responsible tenants. However, we do have, some challenges, and these are challenges that are facing Brattleboro, but they're not unique to Brattleboro. Other communities in Vermont are seeing similar problems related to the criminal activity related to the opioid trade.
Yep.
And what we're seeing now are some groups of out-of-town people who are targeting Brattleboro. Probably proximity to 91 is a key factor.
Yep.
And then they come into town and they prey on vulnerable people, and actually will occupy somebody's unit and run their business out of that unit. Sometimes those are our units.
Right.
So what we're doing with that is trying to work really closely with Brattleboro Police, and also through our own process of lease violations and then leading to eviction.
Right. And a lot in the scenario that you just painted, it's it is this situation where you have somebody who's got a decent home, finally is getting grounded, getting their feet in. These kind of let's just, for lack of a better word, call them vultures, kind of move in, overtake their home, and of course now these people are terrified because they don't want to lose their housing. So. What happens? I mean, how do you address that? What's the number one thing you tell people to do?
Well, one thing that we tell our residents, and this affects neighbors. This affects the community. This affects people in the same building. We encourage people to communicate with us, to let us know that something's happening in that property, and also to call the police department's tip line.
Okay.
And that number is 802-251-8188. And then we follow up by communicating with Brattleboro Police. We have monthly meetings right now, along with the Brattleboro Housing Partnership, in which we kind of talk about key challenges, things we're seeing in properties across our portfolio, and ways that we can kind of share information that can lead to a positive result for that building and that community.
And of course, that positive result being that that behavior stops.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So, like a private, I guess, a private landlord. Again, we're keep comparing and contrasting the two. It takes a while for that to happen sometimes.
Absolutely. Just as a recent example, was we learned there was police action at one of our properties in January. We immediately started the eviction process at the very end of January. The way the process is set up, it affords a lot of time. There's tenant protections, you know, so it affords a lot of time for the tenant to be able to respond and go through the legal process. We finally repossessed the unit and gained possession of it in end of August. So it was a 7-month process, and it was a pretty cut and dry example. There wasn't a lot of nuance there,
Right.
But it still took us 7 months.
And I think if you talk to any landlord at all, they will tell you that process is the same for them. Correct?
Yeah, I think that's just if you look at a flow chart of the legal process, it doesn't take any less than 5 months without any hiccups or delays. It's just that long.
Right.
And so it can be challenging because we take action immediately and it just takes a long time. So I think the thing that we were really encouraged to see in the last month was the state's attorney's office is starting to increase the bail amount.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure we want to advocate for a change in the process. I mean, it's a underpinning of democracy in our country to give people due process. But we are looking for ways to speed things up or to keep the community safe while the process is unfolding. And one of the things that we had been discouraged by is these really low bail amounts enable people to be back on the street immediately, and we can't take possession of a unit. So in some cases, somebody may have been engaged in illegal activity, and they actually have a legal right to come home while we're going through the process. Well, if bail is set at a rate that's prohibitive, for them to pay it, then they're not at home during the process of eviction, and so that keeps the community safer. And I think we're seeing that in a few cases that were reported in the paper, that the bail is starting to get set higher, and we're really encouraged by that development.
Yeah, the drum I beat a lot is the something called released on conditions, which I think also falls in suit with the bail. So I agree with you. I hear the if we can just slow this down, it becomes a little bit more prohibitive to break the law, right? What else are you guys kind of working on, and what is it that you want people to know about what the work that Windham Windsor Housing Trust does? Because I think the last time we had a conversation, we were talking about the thing that failed in the town here on Town Vote, which was the in perpetuity lease renewal thing. I think we talked about that a little bit. But what else do you want folks to know?
Yeah, I think we hear a lot of questions concurrently with these concerns about what kind of services we offer. Does the Housing Trust offer any services? And the answer is, absolutely. We have robust services around the traditional SASH program, which focuses on seniors and folks with disability being able to maintain their housing with support right where they live. And then just last year, we began to pilot a new program, which is called SASH for All, which is targeted to folks who are younger that may not be eligible for the SASH program. And we're a year into that pilot. We're just starting our second year. And we've got a SASH coordinator who helps reach out directly to folks providing one-on-one support, families with children, families without children that really would value the kind of support that the coordinator can provide. We have a wellness nurse on staff. She's part-time, and she is the expert that can help discuss health issues that a mother or a father might have, or even coaching them on getting their children's vaccines and all the things that can be challenging for families if they're busy and they're working and they got lots of different priorities. And sometimes it's just nice to have that one-on-one support. But then the other thing is community programming and building relationships within communities that we serve, either in a building or in a neighborhood, and bringing people together regularly. Because the truth is, multifamily living can be challenging. People have personalities.
Yeah,
and
they do.
Yeah, so we want to build community and that basic level of trust and camaraderie that happens when you do things together. So that's another component of the SASH program, both the traditional SASH program, but also the SASH for All program.
All right. And again, so, we had a chance to discuss a little bit about, certain things like laundry services, for instance, at these places that are provided and subcontracting out to other people for cleaning and doing these kind of things. This is all, I think, the plus side to the work that you do, because you've got many people helping kind of build up your homes and your housing. But I think this can go to people at the Windham Windsor Housing Trust, but I think this is just good information to put out there. If you feel like you are in danger, what should you do?
You're talking about just
in general.
Wide.
I mean,
yeah.
we can apply it to Windham Windsor Housing Trust, of course. But
so one thing, I think I'm really encouraged by the responsiveness and the communication with the Brattleboro Police Department for us as an organization, and I think that likely extends to their approach to the community. So I would say any concerns a resident may have, reach out to that tip line and share that information. So I welcome it, and there's clear action that's taken as a result of that.
And I should point out that this tip line 802-251-8188 is something that you can do. You do not have to give your name. This information is cataloged, and it helps build a case and would help you. So even if you have these situations where somebody needs to go.
Yeah, and I think some people worry that their one tip or their one piece of information isn't going to have a meaningful difference.
That's where they're wrong.
And yes, exactly. We're hearing from the police department that what they might not know is that 10 other people called with other pieces of information or consistent patterns, and all of that begins to weave a story that helps them in their investigation. And of course, whenever there's a challenging dynamic on one of our properties, having police action is actually really helpful because it gives us the kind of objective evidence of what's happening, and it makes our process a lot more easy and more reliable to succeed.
I think if we're going to use an example of something like it takes a village to raise a child, it also takes that same village to keep that village safe. So, if we're all working together and making these phone calls, and and there's also an email address if you are more of a digital. Do you have that?
I do. Yeah, it's bpdtips@brattleboro.org.
All right, bpdtips@brattleboro.org. 802-251-8188 is the good number to call. All right, closing arguments. What have you got?
Well, we're not arguing
I
here,
know.
so I want to thank you for using your voice and your platform to engage in challenging community dynamics. And I'd say there probably isn't an agency that is in a helping position like the Housing Trust that isn't struggling with the opioid crisis in Vermont. It's very pronounced in southern Vermont. It exploded during COVID, and I think we're seeing the aftermath of that. And I think all of us working together can help ameliorate some of the more challenging impacts of it.
Yeah, I think again, I've often there is always a vocal minority of people who grab their torches and their pitchforks and come running at what they feel is what I like to call the soft target. I don't feel that way at all. I think I've expressed that to you. So this is maybe a little bit of what Windham County should hear. And it's my defense of Windham Windsor Housing and the good work that you do every day and getting up every day, putting on your shoes, going out, doing the good work, taking the punches and just not losing your focus on something that's critical in this area. And that is affordable housing. Yeah,
providing a home, that is not to use a cliche, but it is the foundation for stability. And folks that are vulnerable need that stability in order to get a chance. And so we're actually really proud of providing homes to a variety of people in the community, including folks that may be struggling.
Right.
And that does mean sometimes, as you noted, it's a small percentage. Sometimes that can lead to some challenges. And I feel proud of the response that we have when those things come up.
Right.
We just actually heard from the state's attorney's office that they're noticing the quick action that we're taking, and it's very much appreciated at their end. So that was a nice endorsement to hear from them.
Good. All right. Windham Windsor Housing Trust, keep doing the good work that you're doing. Elizabeth, Ed, thanks for jumping on Vermontitude.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.